Good morning, friend. Welcome back. My name is Becky if you're new, and I have not been out in the garden in over a week. We just got back from Montana the day before yesterday. I did not allow myself to go into the garden yesterday because I wanted to get unpacked. I needed to catch up on laundry. I needed to catch up on life. And I figured the best reward and motivation to do all that would be to not allow myself to go into the garden until all those things are done. And then you and I this morning, really early, can get out there, do a bunch of harvesting and do a full tour and see what things are looking like. What I cannot believe is how incredible these dahlias have just exploded, because I have been able to see some things. I had to catch up on some computer work yesterday, so I sat on the patio, and these dahlias that we started from seed together have just gotten absolutely massive, along with that petunia plant. It's probably 3 feet across at this point, and this area is just filling out really nicely. It's giving me all the ideas for next year. And let's get into this garden and see what we can see and see what we can harvest for this week's produce. Oh my goodness, friend, I can already see so many amazing things just from right here. So let's start here. Probably should have grabbed some scissors, but look at this. This is my favorite variety of zucchini. This is a white Italian long zucchini. And there's our first harvest of the day. So I have not been out here in over a week, and I just want to harvest everything I can harvest and kind of get an idea of what we're going to be preserving. For me, when we get back from our Montana trip, because we usually do that the first week of August, that's when the big preservation starts for me after we get back from that trip. And so I need to come up with a game plan for all the things that we're going to do from my garden, plus what I need to purchase from local farmers that's in season right now, and get some of those things purchased so I can preserve those while they're in season. And look at this, my friend. There were none of these when I left. This is my hot pepper bed and flower bed, along with my dragon tongue green beans. And you can eat these look just like this. They're absolutely delicious. They actually turn green when you cook them. The purple turns green. But I am growing these for the drying bean. I want these to grow and produce seed. I can see hundreds of bean pods on here. Some of them are already starting to produce seed. And then we are going to harvest the dried seed and see if they taste like pinto beans. From what I've read, dragon tongue green beans, the dried bean tastes like a pinto bean. So we have tons of pods on this trellis now, which is pretty exciting. Before I left, I harvested all of my jalapenos, and you can see that they're starting to put on another rush or flush of jalapenos. There's flowers on here, so we'll harvest those in a little bit. I harvested all of my straw flowers. This was a volunteer tomato plant that I just let grow. There was tomatoes in this bed, and it looks like we've got some green tomatoes on there. I also harvested all of these purple peppers, and we're starting to get a couple new ones. I'll probably go ahead and harvest these ones. And I can see back here, there are a couple that are ready. I see a red one back there I want to get. I must have missed that red one because they go from purple to red. And then here it looks like there's another volunteer tomato plant with a couple tomatoes on it, which is kind of fun. And the Rebecca is starting to bloom. We've got our Sugar Rush peach peppers. Those are going to turn orange, so I'm going to leave those on there till they turn orange. And it looks like this is what we're getting from this bed so far. I'll just cut that bug spot off. Lots of Rebecca. So now let's look at the slicing tomatoes. I normally don't get to harvest any of those till after we get back from our Montana trip. Oh my goodness, I can already see 2. I did harvest 1 before we left, and I can see there's 2 ready right there. Here is the snapdragon bed where we came and we mowed all the snapdragons down, and I was hoping they would pop up and be much shorter than they were before, and it looks like they are, which is great. This is gonna be super cute when this fills out again. I think I need to cut these snapdragons back. The flowers have been incredible this year. Okay, so lots of green tomatoes on here, and it looks like I have 2 that are ripe. So I harvested one of these slicing tomatoes before we left, and we enjoyed it on those breakfast sandwiches that I made. This one looks like it's split, but it's probably still salvageable. Yeah. There are lots of tomatoes on here, but the majority of them are still green, and it looks like some of these plants need a little bit of help trellising back up this trellis. So I'll probably just do that as I go through the garden. Look at this beautiful, huge green tomato. It's the size of my palm. And there's just tons of green tomatoes on here. So that's exciting. Our season definitely is later in the year than a lot of the country. I like to watch gardeners all over the country. And you all in the South are probably kind of closing out your tomato harvest. And mine is just getting started. But that's the beauty of gardening, is everywhere in the country is so incredibly different. And mine just starts or gets going, the heavy preservation season, not until mid-August. Now look at this. I have a little baby pumpkin. So I'm going to decorate this fall with this baby pumpkin. So that's really fun to see that. I didn't see that before we left. And then over here on this bed, this is our sweet potato bed, our black bean bed, and some green beans, along with just quite a few flowers. So here is our black beans. And last time we were in here together, there weren't any pods really to speak of on these plants. These are a black bean pole bean variety. And it looks like there are tons of pods on here that we're just gonna let hang out here until the pods dry out, and then we'll harvest the seed, and those will be black beans for us, hopefully. This is my first year growing a pole bean variety of black beans, and it's been super fun to watch this happen. You can see how abundant these black beans are on this trellis here, and then it just kind of gets tangly at the top. So I don't know if this is going to produce too many black beans up here at the top. So if this was on a trellis, it would have a lot more room to grow and probably produce more, but you can see that there's flowers here and there's little baby black bean pods. So we'll see. And then the inside of this bed, we've got carrots, and I'm sure there's some green beans in here that need to be harvested. So I'm going to go ahead and grab those while we're here. I harvested these green bean plants really heavily right before we left. So there's just a few on there, but they're putting on tons of new flowers. So we're going to get another flush here pretty soon. And then the sweet potatoes look like they're starting to take off. I have a feeling that those sweet potatoes are not going to give me a huge harvest, but we've got about 2.5 more months to let them grow to see if that is true. I have these 2 tomatoes here. I'm going to go ahead and put these in here because they were in my pocket before I smashed them. Okay, I can see so many things that I want to show you, but we're just going to keep going down one row at a time. Here is our second bed with our snapdragons that I just mowed all of them down. And we have lots of brand new shoots that I'm going to harvest a big bouquet today. But you can see all these green tomatoes. When I left for Montana, there were no big green slicing tomatoes on any of these plants. So that is so exciting to see, because I can probably see 50 very large slicing tomatoes on these plants. I do need to come out here and prop them back up. Before I left, I did heavily prune my tomatoes, all of them, and I made sure they were all trellised up, but 1 week of growth, they definitely need a little bit more attention, but I will do that a little bit later. My San Marzanos, which I've only grown one time, and I had terrible success with them because I grew them in a raised bed just using a T-post to trellis them up, and I did not stay on top of trellising them up, and they did terrible. But these on this trellising system look fantastic. So there's tons of San Marzanos in there. They're not ready to harvest, but it won't be too long and we will have a lot of San Marzanos. And then I'm going to come through and prune these as well. So when I prune my tomatoes, because I live in an area that's not very humid, I typically just prune the leaves. You can see there's some browning on these leaves. I want to give them more airflow. But what I don't prune are the suckers, because the suckers produce flowers that produce tomatoes. And so I do let these get pretty overgrown, but I do remove a lot of the foliage to help with the airflow. And I really need to put gloves on because tomatoes can bother my skin. But when I see these discolored leaves, I really want to get these off the plants. I'll deal with that in a little bit. Moving from that bed over here, this bed has just blown my expectations out of the water. Here we have our scarlet runner beans. You can see all those pink flowers. Those pink flowers are producing these very large pods, and these are a drying bean. I've never eaten them before, so I'm excited to give them a try. They are completely edible. But what they've done is they've provided a tremendous amount of beauty in this garden. They have been flowering for about a month and a half now. And the cool thing is, not only are they providing a ton of beauty in the garden, which is something that I've been working on this year, is more beauty in my garden, but they are also very practical because they provide a bean. So as long as we like eating them, that is going to be super fun to grow next year if I can, because I want to grow those again on one of my arch trellises. And I can see that we have harvesting that needs to happen over here. This is a random tomato plant that I put at the end of this bed because a lot of the scarlet runner beans didn't grow on the edge of this bed. So I plopped in a cherry tomato. It looks like there's quite a few of them I can harvest today. A couple of them split, but that will be okay. I'll get them off the vine. I'll get that one too. That'll turn green inside. And that's going to produce a lot of cherry tomatoes for me. I can see tons of green ones and flowers growing up that vine. Now this bed is also a lot of peppers and our eggplant. This eggplant looks like it needs to be fed, so I'll probably do that this afternoon, where I'll come through and feed a lot of the garden because I haven't fed them in probably about 2 weeks. I've got some peppers that are ready. One thing about not being here for a week is that there are some weeds that are popping up. So this is a huge weed right here, and it is about to go to seed. So I want to get this weed out of here ASAP. I'm glad that I didn't miss the opportunity to get this before it dropped the majority of its seed pods. It looks like there's a couple that have already produced seed, the flowers on here, but I'm going to go ahead and chuck this over the fence. My friend, this is the volunteer tomatillo plant that planted itself, and when we left, it probably was this tall. And look how incredibly tall it is with all these flowers on it. I think you need 2 tomatillos to cross-pollinate to create tomatillos. And I'm hoping that my tomatillo plants that I have over there are doing the job for this plant here, because this plant has more flowers on it than my tomatillo plants over there that I bought. This one planted itself. It's just amazing to me that I can start something indoors, 8 to 10 weeks before I plant it outside, and then one that plants itself can shoot up and be just as big and catch up to the ones that I spent time babying. It's just so funny how volunteers are so vigorous in the garden. Okay, so these peppers look incredible. Let's get some banana peppers. I harvested a lot of banana peppers before we left, and I popped them in the fridge. They are doing just fine in the fridge, so probably tomorrow I will do a big banana pepper preservation day. I will can them. But there are a few more that are ready to harvest here. Some of them are really little, but we'll go ahead and take those. So far, I am thrilled. Oh, I got more over here. I was going to say, so far, I'm thrilled with my pepper harvest. Okay, so this is Okay, a sweet banana. So this is ready for harvest. I am so happy with this pepper harvest. This feels like it's already a success. I've always had a hard time growing peppers, and at the beginning of the season, I did myself a disservice. I overcrowded this bed. You all know that last year I had landscape fabric down, and then this year I'm gardening without it, and I definitely like gardening without the landscape fabric better, but I couldn't contain myself and I kept planting, and I overcrowded these beds a little bit. And so I think I stunted my pepper plants just a bit, but I did remove a ton of the flowers that I planted, gave these peppers some more room, and now they're producing very well. I also have a cherry tomato plant along this edge of this bed, which I need to trellis up, and I got 2 more tomatoes. Now over here, this is absolutely bananas. Look at these cosmos. I have a couple different varieties of cosmos in here, and they have completely taken over this bed. And this definitely needs to be pruned back a little bit because they are huge. But these are some varieties I have never grown before. These are a double cosmo, and they just have a lot of petals. And I've got a couple different colors. I have a light pink and a darker pink. This is the variety I grew last year, and it's a little bit more kind of feminine and romantic, but it's super fun having all these different colors. So I'm gonna come and clean this up. Now, before I left, I didn't have any of my precious metal zinnias blooming because I had to replant these ones, and I started them from seed in this bed, and I think because I had to replant them, they're getting a little overcrowded, I'd say, from the cosmos, but they're still super, super beautiful. This bed is one whimsical flower bed. This was my vision of this bed. I was hoping the zinnias would pop out a little bit more in front, but I can cut back the cosmos. I will harvest a huge bouquet of those. And then we've got our beautiful eucalyptus in the front here. Now, this is not great. This is a big weed. I can see that's starting to go to seed. I'm gonna go ahead and pull that right now before I forget. Grab as much of that plant as I can. I'm gonna toss this over the fence as well. This is a beautiful bed to me, but it does look like that my sweet peas are still hanging on and blooming, but I think I need to go ahead and pull those at some point this week because they have kind of done. You know what I might actually do, because I pulled the sweet peas already in the other bed. I'm gonna let these ones fully go to seed, and I think what I'll do, because I'm not gonna be able to grow anything else on this arch trellis this year because we don't have enough time. So I'm just gonna let these go to seed, and I will harvest the seed, which will be kind of fun. So now we're gonna move over to this bed, and I've got cherry tomatoes over here that also need a little bit of coaxing up this trellis. I really like growing cherry tomatoes on these arch trellises. You can see how far up they've already gotten. And what I need to do is harvest quite a few tomatoes. There's definitely some ripe ones in here and lots of green ones. And I need to prune these as well. I want to get all of this discoloration out of here. From those cherry tomatoes, this is one of 2 Roma tomato beds. I'm going to be making all my marinara sauce out of these Roma tomatoes. And I don't see any that are ripe yet, but I certainly see a lot of green ones. This was an experiment because I ran out of tomato gauges, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to try, with these 3 plants just to see what happens if I don't cage them up. And that might be a total fail, but we're just experimenting with a couple plants, and it looks like they are drooped over from the weight of the tomatoes, but we will see if that ends up being okay. I also have my cucumbers in here, and these are the first 2 cucumbers of the season, so we'll have that in there. I am very excited though about all those green tomatoes in there because there are a lot of green tomatoes. And I ran out of marinara sauce about 2.5 months ago because I made the best marinara sauce I have ever made, and we ate it up very, very quickly. And so I'm excited to go ahead and make that again with those Roma tomato plants. Here are our potatoes. I thought that they would be ready when we got back to harvest, and I think I'm right. So I'm gonna text my dad later today, and I am going to ask him if there's a day this week he wants to come and harvest potatoes with me because they have died back really well. This is a volunteer tomato plant, and I didn't know what variety it was. This planted itself, and it looks like it's a San Marzano because those look like little San Marzanos on there. These potatoes died back a long time ago, and I covered them with a bunch of weed debris, not weeds, but like cuttings from different plants in the garden that I pruned back, and it's starting to break down really, really well. This is a weed, I think, so I'm gonna go ahead and pull that. That's a icky grass. I'm just gonna let that sit there. I will throw that over the fence a little bit later. Looks like I left a coffee mug out here while we were gone the whole time. And then this is the second Roma bed. The cilantro is looking fantastic. This is, I think, my 3rd or 4th planting of cilantro. I have some lettuce in there that's finally popping up. Lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of green Romas. There looks like there's one that's blushing there. I'm gonna let that ripen on the vine, and I'll harvest that when I harvest quite a few of these tomatoes. Every year I think, oh my goodness, I'm gonna have no tomatoes to harvest because I see you all in the south and you are in the depths of preservation already. And then I realize we're just a little slower to get there. And then we end up getting there. And I know that I will be bombarded within the next month or so of tons of tomatoes, and I will be grateful for it. Now here, I did a planting of lettuce, and this is looking really good. When we were gone, it was in the 90s the whole time, and I planted this lettuce kind of in between these tomato plants because I wanted them to get shaded out, and that seems to be working really well. So we'll probably have a couple salads this week, and we'll just do a cut and come again method with that. And I probably need to come and harvest this cilantro pretty heavily this week as well. I think this year I probably am gonna be able to grow enough cilantro for us to have tons of dried cilantro. And on this arch trellis, I forgot that I had planted dragon tongue beans because I wanted to kind of replant because my sweet peas weren't doing super well. And look at all these dragon tongue beans that are growing up this trellis. I'm thinking we are going to probably get a harvest off these beans. It's gonna be fun to see what happens with this arched trellis. I planted this about a month after I planted those, so it might not be as abundant of a harvest on these as those, just because they have a little bit of a later start. But I'm excited to see what it's gonna look like up on this trellis and give me a good idea of if I plant pole beans on these arch trellises, if on both sides, if I can get it to meet in the middle, which is what I want really badly. I just envisioned that and I haven't got it. So maybe next year we can reach that goal. The zinnias look outstanding. I cannot believe how beautiful these zinnias are. Absolutely incredible. The echinacea is so big that it is falling over. I'm considering harvesting some of this roots to make a tincture out of, but we'll see. We have another planting of cilantro along this bed that's doing fantastic. And this is a volunteer tomato plant that's growing out of the gravel. And I just left this. When we left, it probably was about this tall. It is very tall now and it's starting to set some flowers. So I'm just gonna leave it and we're gonna see what happens. It probably doesn't get quite as much sun as it would like here, but volunteers are so vigorous, I thought we would just leave that plant there. And then before we left, we pulled back all of the sweet peas here, and I never ended up planting anything there, so that's just a weed that needs to be pulled. Again, at this point, I don't have anything that can grow up these arch trellises that will produce anything by the time frost sets in. Another thing I did before we went out of town is I did a second planting of peas, and I can see that they are starting to come up, which is fantastic. I was a little worried They were going to be a little shaded out due to the onions, but that doesn't seem to be bothering them at all. So hopefully in about a month or two, we will have some peas growing up this trellis. It looks like I left a couple gloves out here. And then here we have more of our baby white pumpkins that we are going to be decorating this fall with. Those ones are looking very mature and beautiful. And then we got another one here. And then onions. We are going to be harvesting a lot of onions very, very soon. Some of them are falling over. This is a sign the onion is ready to harvest. But what I'm also seeing, and look how big these onions are. These are some of the best onions I have ever grown. They are probably they are probably baseball size. Normally I grow golf ball size onions, so I'm very happy with the size of these onions. But what I'm noticing with some of the varieties of onions I have is that they are setting flower, which means the onion thinks that it is on its second year and it will not store well. So if I pull this onion now and I try to cure this onion that is already set flower, then what will happen is the onion will go bad. Onions are biannuals, which means the first year you plant a seed, it grows, and the idea is that it's supposed to grow a bulb, and then the plant dies back. The next year, because it stored its energy in the bulb, the plant grows up, produces seed, and it produces seed every other year. So if I was to harvest this onion and try to store it for winter use, it will go bad pretty quickly. The onion is still perfectly good to eat, so I will just eat all the onions first that have gone to seed. Before we went out of town, I didn't do any grocery shopping for about 2 weeks, and I don't plan to do any big grocery shopping for at least a month or so. What I want to try to do is do kind of a pantry challenge in the middle of harvest so that it forces me, and not forces me, but it encourages me to obviously use up the garden produce first and the things that I have in my freezer. Now that's not going to include things like I'm going to go peach picking this afternoon and pick peaches because peaches are in season, so I need to get those when they're in season, and we don't have any peach trees. But things like onions and garlic and lettuce and tomatoes and green beans and those types of things that I'm growing an abundance of, enjoying those while they are in season. So it's okay that some of these onions are bolting and they need to be used because I don't have any onions in my house, and I will just use those in my cooking. Now I do have some parties and some birthday cooking I need to do. So if I need to buy chocolate or things like that I don't grow here, I will go to the grocery store for those types of things. But my goal is going to be to try to do kind of like a summer pantry challenge, and I'll kind of talk to you more about that as time goes on. I wanted to get out here first and see what the garden had to offer before I kind of set my rules for that summer pantry challenge. Now I've got some more pumpkins growing in here. These are some more baby pumpkins. I think these are the orange variety, but I don't see any in here yet. But what I do see over here is an absolute explosion of this pumpkin bed right here. And I see a lot of beautiful pumpkins. Now look at this one. This is huge for size comparison. This is my hand. That is beautiful. I love the color of that pumpkin. We have lots of white pumpkins. I want to decorate my front porch and my back patio with these white flat stacking pumpkins. Oh my goodness, friend. Okay, so I've got one here that didn't get pollinated properly. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and, well, I'll get that later, but I'm gonna take that off the vine. We've got another pumpkin here. We have two here. I have to carefully walk through these vines because I don't want to step on the vines themselves. This is a new variety to me this year. This is one of the kind of like textured pumpkins. That was not here when I left. We have more white pumpkins. Here's another one that's not pollinated. I need to pull that off, but I'm going to put a glove on before I do that. I am so excited to see this. This was not here when I left. This is that green variety. This is going to be so beautiful to decorate my front porch with. Now, I have all of these labeled in here, but what happened is the plants got too big and I can't really read the labels anymore. But once I start to harvest, I can go through and look up all of these varieties again. Oh my goodness. I see one baby pumpkin there that got pollinated, but look at this trellis. Look at this huge pumpkin right here. It's doing so well on this arch. I pollinated that by hand. We've got another one that looks like it was properly pollinated right there. And we officially have one plant that has grown over the arch trellis. So that is a huge success. And then I did notice, looks like that one got pollinated. This one needs to be pollinated. I don't know if we have time for that to grow out before it fully matures, but we will see. This was just a wee little pumpkin when I left. This is yet another one that is huge. That is so exciting. I've got a couple in here as well. I don't know what variety most of these are because I can't remember. There's a bee doing its job right there. Another pumpkin there. Another pumpkin there. Pumpkins are one of my favorite things to grow, and I was a little worried that we weren't going to get a big pumpkin harvest because they kept dying. They weren't getting properly pollinated, even though I was out here pollinating things. That one I did hand pollinate, but I think we are going to get a good pumpkin harvest now at this point. So that is super successful, seeing that pumpkin grow on that trellis. That's something I've wanted, and it looks like it's happening. Now, what I can see over here, well, let's go over here first, because this is a really fun experiment that I've just had so much joy watching the process of this grow. This is our wheat that we planted, and we need all of the wheat to die back completely before we can harvest it. So these plants right here look like they are ready, but we have a lot of green left on a lot of them, and we need them all to die back before we can harvest them. And I'm really looking forward to harvesting this because I think this is just the most interesting experiment to date. I was researching when I was out of town if deer eat wheat, and they don't seem to bother wheat. So if this harvest is successful, Josh and I have already talked about it, that we want to plant a huge area of wheat down here in this field. I can't plant pumpkins or a lot of crops because down there the deer will just snack on it. I see deer on our property all the time, but if they don't bother wheat, then it might be fun to try to do a big harvest of wheat. Now here, my friend, oh my goodness, this is very classic. We have been enjoying zucchinis for about a week before we left. They had just started coming in, and it looks like we are going to be enjoying zucchinis for the next little bit. So let's go ahead and harvest these big ones. This one got stuck underneath the bed there. Some of these I will go ahead and shred up, and we will enjoy those for like zucchini bread. But these little tender ones, I'll harvest them tomorrow, and we will just enjoy those for dinner. This bed is also the Petite Florette bed, and I don't think I'm going to grow this variety again, just because they don't put on, I mean, this flower is beautiful, but I like the other varieties a little bit better. Oh, here we go. We will have this one for dinner tonight as well. I love this variety of zucchini, and we might have this one or part of it for dinner tonight as well. Look at that, beautiful. The sunflowers in the zucchini Petite Florette dahlia bed are starting to take off. I'm actually standing on this Roma tomato bed so I can show you, but I think in the next week or so we're going to have some sunflowers popping through that bed, and that's going to be beautiful. Now over here, I cannot believe what I am looking at over here. We have our Anaheim peppers, and I need to Google when I'm supposed to harvest these. These look really beautiful, and there's a ton of them on here. This one's red, so this one's for sure ready to harvest. Here's a bell pepper that's definitely ready to harvest. I have a ton of shishito peppers that are ready. I just Googled it and it said that I should harvest these Anaheim peppers when they're dark green or 80 days. I have no idea how many days it's been since I planted these. So I think I'm gonna let them ripen just a little bit more because I see some yellowing on them, but you can tell me if you think that these are ready to harvest. What I want to do with these is roast them and either freeze them. I think I'm going to freeze them and have them like the diced chilies that you would get in a can. So I want to make sure they are nice and ripe. So I'm not going to use those for fresh eating, so I don't mind letting them hang out on the vine a little bit longer. But we did just get this beautiful shishito pepper harvest. We will eat these fresh, or I will cook them, but we will eat them. Now these to me look like Sugar Rush peach peppers, but I have them listed as these, and I may have mixed up the label because these definitely look like Sugar Rush peach pepper. So I'm gonna let them hang out here and we'll see what happens with those. But I can see that I have poblanos that are ready. And I think what I'm gonna do with these poblano peppers, normally I dice these up and freeze them and I use them in fajitas and things like that throughout the winter. But I think what I wanna do with these is use these in making chili rellenos. I think that 4 of those would be perfect amount for my family for a dinner. I have a couple more over here. These ones are a little bit small, but I don't think they're gonna get any bigger. I think I'm gonna leave those and see what happens with those. But back here you can see these are dragon tongue beans. Half of the back of this trellis is dragon tongue beans. The other half is black beans. The soil in this bed was much, much more nutrient dense, I believe, because these plants, you can see how much deeper green they are and how much more dense this foliage is than it is up there. I have fed those with a liquid fertilizer, but it just shows that in the spring, before I plant anything next year, each bed is gonna get about 2 to 3 inches of compost so that all my plants can look like this absolute jungle of beans in here. Now again, this trellis is way too short for these beans, so they are growing up and over, and where they're down here, I see tons of pods. They are absolutely loaded, but I'm not sure if up here, because it's gonna be too crowded out, that I'm not gonna get a huge harvest. But there are a lot of flowers on here, so we'll just see what this ends up happening. Like here you can see a baby bean there, and how beautiful this trellis is. I want all my trellises to look this dense and lush. So that just tells me compost, compost, compost. Super happy though with how this pepper bed and bean bed is looking so far. Now over here, we definitely have things that are ready to harvest. I did a very heavy harvest on this right before we left. So I knew that there would be ready ones when we got back. I just have a tiny little patch of green beans right here. This is jade green beans. It's probably 2.5 feet by the length of the bed. And this is the 3rd time I've harvested this many green beans from this little patch. So green beans can be very prolific. So you can grow a lot of food in a pretty small space. And green beans do really well in green stalks, and they do really well in containers. So if you don't have a big garden bed like this, you could just get yourself a pot, plant some green beans in it, and get a pretty decent harvest off of it. So I know that I'll be able to get probably 1 or 2 more harvests off these plants just like that. We'll probably just eat those fresh, but that's not my only green beans that I have in this bed. I have some more green beans, but I also have tons of dahlias. And this variety of dahlia is called, I can't remember. I don't know why I can't remember this one. The one in my landscape is called Bee's Choice, and this one is called Shooting Star, I believe. And look at this one in here. This is by far the most beautiful dahlia that I have growing, because it is I think this is called like a double or something. Most of the dahlias that I started from seed are these really pretty single petal dahlias that are kind of romantic looking and feminine and just very dainty. But then there's this one that is just a big puff ball of petals, and it's so beautiful. So I think this one, I'm gonna try to save the tubers and try to overwinter this and replant it. I've got some really beautiful ones in here that dahlias, these were so easy to start from seed. But the thing is, when you start them from seed, you can see all this different variety that you can get. This is all the same seed variety of dahlia, but they cross-pollinate, and so you get just a huge variance of color and size. And if you save the tuber and you plant the tuber, then obviously you're planting the same plant and you can get an identical dahlia. So I want to see if I can save this. We'll see if that's something I can do for next year. I'm definitely going to start dahlia seeds again next year, because a seed packet, now these were kind of expensive seeds. I think one packet was like $17, but I got over 40 plants, and for me to buy one dahlia tuber online is about $8, and that would be one plant, and I probably have 25 plants in this one bed alone, plus I have probably 40 plants in my landscape. And so even though this seed pack was a little bit more expensive, still price per plant once you grow it out, and they were really easy to start, I think they were worth the investment. But in this same dahlia bed where some of the cilantro has gone to seed and is feeding my bees, I've got some more green beans on this side. Oh, yep, there's a lot in there. In the green bean dahlia bed, those sunflowers are about to bloom, which will be really beautiful. I mean, we've just got such beauty in this bed. These are so beautiful. So that is the green bean harvest for today. Again, this area is a small area. It's about 2 feet by the length of the bed, which is 4 feet. And we got a lot of green beans with a lot more baby ones on there that we'll be able to harvest shortly. Now from this bed, we have our onion and celery bed. And this variety of onions are Walla Wallas, and so many of them have gone to seed. I'm gonna harvest this one. But some of them haven't, like this beautiful big one. This is a softball size. It is huge. And so when I need an onion, I'll just come out and harvest the one that has gone to seed. They're absolutely beautiful. Some of the best onions I have ever grown. Look at those beauties. And then in here we have carrots. And we had carrots in the other bed too. I forgot to mention that. I don't know if these are ready. You can sometimes take your finger and rub it around the soil, and you can see kind of the diameter of the carrot, and that is pretty skinny. So I'm gonna cover that back up, and we'll let that continue to grow. On the back side of this onion bed, we have our celery root, and I can see that they are starting to bulb up. So that's gonna be fun. I've never had success growing celery root before, and it is absolutely delicious. And then over here, we have celery. And my celery has done the worst it's ever done. I've always had pretty good success growing celery, and this year they're doing okay. They actually look pretty good. I did cut them back all the way to the ground before we left to try to give them a fresh start, and that seems to help. Now, when I grow celery, in the past, it's had a very strong flavor. So I tend to use it more in stocks and things like that than actually in my cooking, because I haven't been able to grow a mild flavor celery. And so it works really well as a flavoring agent. But so I'm okay that it's not doing like absolutely fantastic, but I am excited that the celery root is doing fantastic because I do love celery root. Now this bed, this is another pumpkin bed with zinnias in it. The zinnias are doing fantastic, but the pumpkins are not doing so great. We do have quite a few pumpkins in here, but what's happened is a lot of them have been pretty damaged. I think this is a bunny. I'm not exactly sure what's damaging them, or a bird maybe pecking at them, but I've had a lot of damage on these pumpkins in this bed. This pumpkin's not gonna make it because it's got damage all the way through the skin. A bunch of them did not get fully pollinated. Like that one is just gonna mold on the vine, so I need to take that off. This one looks pretty good. I think it's probably protected because it's up here on the bed. But these ones down here, like that one I don't think got fully pollinated because that's a really soft spot. Now this is a green pumpkin that looks actually really good. This one doesn't look too bad. Well, actually, I don't know, maybe it's okay. That one didn't get fully pollinated. This one looks really good. We'll see if anything comes of that one. We've got a couple up here on the trellis that look really good. And then there are some random pumpkins over here. There's a white one, an orange one. This actually looks like the best out of any of the ones that we have over here. Another green one and some other random ones. A couple in there. This one got a lot of damage on it too. I'll just let it grow and see what happens. And then it looks like it just put on a new baby pumpkin here. My only guess with this bed is why it's not doing near as well as the one over there is that one I had put compost and manure down right before I planted. And this bed here, I put the compost and manure last fall. So I think that over winter, the nutrients leaked out of the bed and these plants were not as strong and healthy. When plants are not as strong and healthy, they are more susceptible to bug damage. They are more susceptible to predator damage. And so I think that these plants were just weaker and the bugs and or the bunnies or the birds picked up on that and have been picking on them. So last year, when I put the garden to bed, I'm gonna show you this in just a second, I put compost and manure down, covered it with landscape fabric, and then most of the beds I just started planting things in right in the spring. But the beds where I put the compost on the beds in the spring, those plants are doing so much better. So at the end of the season, I'm not gonna put compost and manure. I wanted to give myself a jump start in spring. So I did a favor to myself is I prepped the beds in the fall, but I think that the nutrients leached out and I will get more bang for my buck because if I'm gonna be purchasing compost, then I want it to have as much nutrients in it for my plants. So I will be doing that in the spring. In this bed here, I have lots of tomatoes that are ready. So I'm gonna grab these real quick. These are so delicious. Lots of green ones, but there are also lots of ripe ones. And I do need to trellis this up. From those tomatoes, we have one of the beds that I cannot believe how well it's doing. This is the black bean bed, but this is the bush bean variety. And these beans, or bean plants, I should say, are absolutely loaded. They look so good. Now you're starting to see some yellowing and dying back. That's because that's what these plants do. Once these have completely kind of died back and dried out, I will harvest the black beans. This right here, as long as everything goes according to plan, is going to be a year's worth of black beans for Josh and I. Now, one thing I did notice over here is I'm pretty sure a little critter, if I had to guess, it's probably a bunny, because I see bunnies in my garden every day I'm in the garden, is that it looks like something kind of chomped on these plants. Now, luckily, it looks like most of the bean pods have not been touched. Maybe a couple of them have been eaten, but for the most part where I'm seeing the damage, it looks like it's just the foliage that is damaged, but they've left the majority of the bean pods alone. So that is encouraging. And then our sunflowers that were volunteers are starting to bloom in this bed. So that's fun to see the sunflowers. Now this bed, we planted this not too long ago, about 2 weeks ago, I think. Right here we have volunteer potatoes that we'll harvest when we harvest those potatoes up there. We also planted a second succession of carrots, which it looks like we have pretty good germination for it being in the 90s the whole time we were gone. Over here is where we planted potatoes. And I also put on top, this is all the cilantro cuttings. I use this kind of as mulch. And you can see that that is starting to die back. This was probably covered with this much greenery and it's died back quite a bit. And the fingerling potatoes are starting to pop up. And our third succession of green beans are starting to look really good. And it probably won't be too long before we start to harvest off these green bean plants. I'm really glad that I planted these because this is really going to extend my green bean harvest. Now, obviously I just harvested a ton of green beans, but we will eat those fresh. We will have no problem going through that amount of green beans. And so it'll be nice that these are gonna pop up and we will be able to start harvesting these once these plants right here are done. So here is today's harvest. I've got one more big harvest I need to go do today, but we've got 2 of my favorite zucchinis. You can see how even though they're big, they stay really tender. And then we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 very large zucchinis. A couple onions just for eating this week. I need to come up with a meal plan. I've got many more onions where that came from. Lots of peppers. I think I'm definitely gonna do chili rellenos. I wanted to do that last year with the poblano peppers, and I never got to it. Lots of shishito peppers, lots of green beans, lots of cherry tomatoes. I'll probably make a quick salsa with that with some onion and cilantro. Lots of banana peppers, which I'm probably gonna can into pickled banana peppers, and lots of bell peppers. I just brought this up here and I'll deal with it in a little bit. Next, what I wanna do is go get some blueberries. Before I get the blueberries though, I wanna just show you, look at this. These are all of the petunias and snapdragons that we started together, and a couple of the pansies we started together. That is a volunteer nasturtium up there, and I just can't believe how big these flowers got. These are the dahlias that we started together. This plant is huge. This variety of dahlia in here is the Bee's Choice, and they are starting to bloom and just get really, really big. Here you can really see just how different these are the petunias we started together. Each individual variety looks like. Here are the dahlias we started together, the petunias we started together, more dahlias. This one I think is absolutely stunning. I might try to save the tubers on these ones. I'm gonna have to go through and mark which tubers I want to dig up and try to save. Oh, hello there. I also want to leave some in the ground because some people around here say you can overwinter dahlias. Some people say you can't. So I figured, see how pretty that is? All those flowers we started together. Some of them I bought like, I think that the violas or pansies, some of those we bought at Lowe's, but all the petunias we started, this petunia, I started here with you all. These ones here. This is one of my favorite dahlias. It's kind of random which color they pop up, so it's kind of cool that some of my favorite ones are right up here by the patio. But I think I'm gonna try overwintering some just in the ground, and then some I'm going to dig up the tubers and just experiment. Even the ones that I don't love, like I love them all, but even the ones that aren't my favorite colors, I might dig them up and just see what happens. So now I'm gonna go harvest all the blueberries I can. From here you can probably see the blue that's popping out on these plants. I have probably gotten about 3 or 4 gallons of blueberries off these plants already. Let me show you this real quick. The bees look fantastic. My flower patches, I've got a couple little sunflowers there, but I kind of gave up on these areas because They were getting mowed down by little rabbits that live right in there, and or deer. So I kind of stopped watering them, and my beautiful wildflower patches that dream kind of disappeared. I'm gonna try to harvest as many as I can. They are the best tasting they have tasted all year because they have just been ripening on the bush, and they are so incredibly delicious. We came out yesterday and ate a bunch of them for dessert. So I'm gonna spend about 20 minutes out here or so picking as many blueberries as I can in that amount of time. And then as a family, we're gonna head to a peach farm and we are gonna pick this year's peaches that we're gonna eat. So I wanna thank you for being here. If you enjoyed this, I'll pop a couple of my other videos here. You can go enjoy between now and my next upload. I greatly appreciate the fact that you take time out of your day to spend time with me. I don't take that for granted. So thank you for being here. Thank you for being you. And I can't wait to see you next time. Bye, friend.